How's it going, everyone? This is part 4 of my series. I followed a Laravel tutorial but used my framework instead. Today we're going to be going over models. So let us begin.
That within a database can be a little bit confusing. Next lesson is going to make everything a lot easier, so stick around. Like we explored in the last lesson, now that you have a database, there's a number of different ways that you can interact with that database. You can use a GUI, like
Weird. So certain things, this is one of the things I gotta address is what you call it. Windows does things differently. And the database is still running. So I definitely need to update the return on here. Let's go into vendor, Chappy, source, core services, auth service. Let's do that's so freaking dumb. You're supposed to be able to do more than one type. Really? Okay, so that's one thing I need to fix. So it's a Windows thing. So this is why we're doing this exercise. Because Windows sucks. Because it logged me out. let's fix that real quick. This wasn't the intention of the series to do actual live updates on the framework, but alright, so alright. Let's that'll be a new version right there. I gotta see here, release version. Two point 0.3. Alright, so just gotta test that out a little bit, and then we can push that update to GitHub. Alright.
Table plus or dbeaver to interact with your database, even insert.
But we'll wait until after the series is done in case any other issues arise from that hotfix.
New things, delete things. That's a little bit more hands-on, where you have a more manual approach within.
Oh, yeah. I need to rebuild my account after a migration. All right. That's the problem I'm trying to solve right there, because after migration things get wonky. All right.
And PHP Artisan Tinker to use maybe raw SQL, which sounds a little crazy and a little strange and maybe a little scary. But you can also use something like the DB facade, which Laravel gives out of the box to say, hey, here's a little bit easier way of working within a database. But don't worry, it gets even easier. Right now, this lesson, we're going to talk about models. If we're going back to our restaurant analogy, the M in MVC model is our kitchen. It prepares the food, it organizes your data structure, it keeps everything nice and neat. And in a Laravel application, you can use models to interact with your database in a really, really beautiful way, an eloquent way. So as you can see here, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. We already have a model created for us. That's the user model. So why don't we take a look at what this actually looks like? There's a few things I want to point out. First, there's things like it can use specific things within Laravel, like has factory or notifiable. We won't dive into either of those this course, but it's helpful to know that there are things that can interact with a model as a whole. Next, we have this fillable array. This is just to show Laravel that people can, within your application, enter a name, an email, and a password into this table in your database. And so this fillable array is the one that we're going to focus on as we create a new model for our chirps. There are other additional arrays like hidden or cast, and what this does is allow you to interact with your model in even more depth. We won't touch those just yet. So let's go ahead and create our own model. Opening up our terminal again, PHP artisan make model, and then we're going to pass it a singular capitalized name for our model. In this case, chirp. Again, if we want to just leave that off, it gives us a little indicator of what that should be named. In this case, flight, but I'm not using flights, I'm using chirps, so chirp. Now, before I run this make model command for our chirp, I did want to make a note that Laravel has this time-saving flags for models, that if we were to create a model but add a dash, a parameter of MRC,
the tables
this would
will be
do
different.
everything that we've already done within this course. It would create the chirp model, of course. It would create an M, a migration, like we did in lesson 6. It would create a resource controller, like we did.
Make model, and then let's see here. All right.
Did in lesson 5. That's RC for resource controller. But since we already have those, we're just going to make the model. Heading into that chirp model, just like I said, we want to first focus on that fillable array. So in this protected fillable array, we're just going to have our message. And this is because
let's go set up our model. So let's do all right, we're not doing soft delete here. All right. All right.
this is the only field in our model that we need to enter into the database. Next, Laravel's Eloquent allows us to attach these relationships between different models. That's going to be great for us because we have users that are associated to chirps and chirps that are associated to a single user. So we can do just that. We can create a public function of user. And here's where we can type hint this to say this belongs to. We're pulling that in, this use illuminate database eloquent relations type. We're going to return this, which is this model, belongs to, and then we can pass in the user class. So in this case, the user model. And this is letting Laravel know throughout this application, anytime we call user on our chirps, we'll be able to grab the user's information that's associated to that single instance of a chirp or multiple chirps. Now we want to do the inverse for what we already have within our Laravel application for our user. So if we go to our user model, we want...
All right, so I think I have, this should be a standard thing in the framework. Maybe not. So one thing I need to do is use and then let's see here, before save. That's weird. I think I do have a function called find by ID. Console.
Laravel or multiple chirps. Now we want to do the inverse to the user, and then we can pass in the user class. So in this,
So we want to have a function. This is how we're going to do it. Actually, that's, since the model already has that function, we just got to do this in the controller.
in this case, the user model. And this is letting Laravel know throughout this application.
And I'm not really happy. Why is that? This is what happens when you take a nap right before you do a video.
And anytime we call user on our chirps, we'll be able to grab the user's information that's associated to that single...
A nap after consuming 100 grams of protein after a lower body workout.
instance of a chirp or multiple chirps. Now we want to do the inverse for what we already have within our Laravel application for our user. So if we go to our user model, we want to have this user associated to chirps. And this is more just for simplicity's sake. If I want to grab a single user's chirps, then this would be helpful. And we're going to do just that. Public function chirps. Again, this is on the user model. We're going to type hint this with a has many related relationship, and that was imported in at the top. And then we're going to return this has many. We're going to pass in again that model of chirp class. And since we're in the same model namespace, we don't have to bring in that chirp model as a import. So what do these relationships actually look like in code? I kind of talked through it with you, but why don't we actually write it out? If I want to grab a chirp's user, I could do this, or this is a chirp, and I want to grab the user. And this would give me something like, hey, this is Josh, who is the user. Again, this is just handy to know how all this fits together. So in PHP Artisan Tinker, and again, well, this is just muscle memory to be able to learn how Tinker works and how our model works. You could do this with something like AI or even within a graphical interface to create these new users or maybe even chirps associated with the user. But this lets us know how our model's relationships also work as well. So if I wanted to create a new user, we could use the user namespace, the app/models/user namespace, and we want to create a new user.
Oh yeah, I was escaping that. All right.
Now, here's where we can input the name of Josh. We can enter the email, and maybe this is josh@laravel.com. And then we could enter the password. Now, Laravel gives us a easy way to enter a password without having to encrypt it ourselves. We can do this bcrypt function where I'm going to then enter my password. And then we'll just say that this is a testing password. And then we're going to close this out. So there we go. We have our new user. So now this user can have chirps associated with it. So why don't we do that? We already have the user, so now I want to create a new chirp. So let's say a new chirp is going to be from the user in this PHP Artisan Tinker session. We want to say that they're chirps. I want to create a new chirp for this user. And the message is going to be, this is a new associated chirp created by Tinker. And again, close that out. Oops, I had that backwards up there. So we need the bracket and then the parentheses. There we go. This is a new associated chirp, and it's automatically attached to the user ID of 1, the user that we just created that is then in our user variable. So why don't we see what this actually looks like now using that relationship. We can echo out the chirp user name. Oh, that's Josh. That's awesome. It's simple as that. We don't have to make a fancy SQL query in order to grab that name and then be able to make sure that that's actually our name. It just works because we created that relationship. And of course, we can use our model in different ways too. We can say that the app models chirp. I want to grab all of the chirps. Well, it's as simple as this. We're grabbing all of the chirps. We just have one in our database, but that's neat to know that within one line of code, I can get all of the chirps, all of their information, the users that are associated with them. And we can do the same thing. And instead of all, we can say even the latest, and we'll get those as well. And this is the same thing, but it would get the ones most recent first, where if we had multiple chirps up here for all of the chirps, it would show them in chronological order, the order that they were created rather than most recent first. And all of this is going to be extremely helpful as we start building out our chirper application, because you need all of these queries. You need these eloquent model relationships, as well as knowing, okay, how do we get the latest chirps actually sent to our view? I'm going to exit out of Tinker, Now let's go ahead
model.
and update our controller with our real data now.
Let's see here. Model. I'll just make a note. See if we have the equivalent. All right.
Because if we remember, in our chirp controller, we were just passing in fake chirp data. Well, instead of this chirps array, why don't we actually grab the chirps from the model? We can say chirp. We can.
All right. Let's go. Let's do this. All right. So it's if user equals and I think it's by user ID. Then all right, so now we got to go into chirp. All right, so now so now we got to do chirp. And then I have a user, I think it's under globals. Do I have a timestamp? I don't have that exposed as a global. Let's see here. core lib. There you go.
Bring in that model right up here, use app models chirp, and I want to say I want to grab all the chirps with the user. This is so that we can eager load that user relationship, and it prevents n+1 queries. In that case, having to query the database multiple times for things that we already have. We want to grab those chirps via the latest. Let's say we want to take 50 of them maybe. This is so that we don't have all of the chirps loaded on one screen. There's other ways around this, but for now, this is going to be the easiest. And then we're going to get those chirps. And we shouldn't have to change anything else because we're still passing that chirps variable to our chirps home. So there's a few things that we need to change in order to update our view to accept this real data. First of all, it's not an array anymore. It's an actual model, and that's going to look a little bit different. I'm going to paste this in, then we'll walk through exactly what changed. First, I changed things to for else. This is a little bit easier, but mostly so I can teach you something new. For else, this says for else all the chirps as chirp. This still exists in the same way, but if it's empty, then we can show an empty state.
Is there a for else here? Nope. All right, so
There's no
all right,
chirp
that's
set.
just some
It refers
syntactical
to
sugar.
chirp. And then everything that we would have passed as an array in our PHP now is the chirp message. This is associated to that model now. Chirp created at, and this is a cool little.
So we can do something similar. If and then let's see here. That's basically it.
Laravel helper diff for humans, which is going to tell us how long ago did this actually happen, that specific date. And then this is just showing that it's going to say the username if that user exists, otherwise it will be anonymous, because again, we have the ability, at least right now, to say that no user has to create a chirp. We can create one without having an authenticated user. So what does this look like in the browser? Well, it looks like this. You can see that this was a chirp that was created by us. We did that within Tinker. I'm going to go in the database and create some more just so you can see. In our chirps, we're going to create a new one. We don't have to use it as a user ID. I'm just going to say this is my second chirp. And we're going to say that this is the same date and time, just for simplicity's sake. There we go. We have an anonymous chirp because this chirp does not have a user associated with it.
All right. I thought you could do this. Ah.
Let me do this a couple more times. And there we go. We're starting to see how.
Okay. I have no idea. All right. Yeah, that's that's wrong there. It's just putting ones from my user account. If I do this, edit. I really don't feel like messing around with this right now. We can fix that.
Now this is turning into a real-world application. We're having things stored in the database. At least we're being able to then read them and also take relationships from them, saying, hey, this is anonymous. There's no user associated with it.
What happens when I do that? Crap. Yeah. I'm gonna have to resolve let's see here. Let's get going.
But this one has a user, and that user has a name. Just to confirm how those relationships work,
What? I think that's working. Ha ha! Yeah! Bring it! That's kind of similar.
instead of showing user name, maybe I want to show user email here. There we go. There's the email that I entered for my user that I created. So now your app has real data. You have chirps that are in the database, but you now have an easier way to work with those chirps using models and specifically using Eloquent within Laravel to query that data, but also write that data as well. And those relationships between users and chirps is something that's going to make this application a whole lot easier in the end, and every application that you make within Laravel. So next up, let's clean up our application a little bit, get some UI niceties in there, componentize some things, and then get our database and our application ready for users to start entering their own information. All right, our application is starting to take shape.
All right, so that's it for this video. It's, I mean, for 4816 to 12-minute section, 40 minutes. That's 46 minutes. That sounds about right. So let's do this. That sounds pretty good. Excuse me. Next section, we'll be showing feeds. So that's takes 6 minutes to go through in the video, but it'll probably take me 2 hours to figure it out. All right, so that's it for this video, and we'll see you next time.